Welcome to Talent Sorcery. I'm Andrew, your host, and today we have Tiina Zilliacus, who is joining us to talk about entrepreneurship and personal and professional journeys. Tiina, could you please introduce yourself and tell us about your journey a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Andrew. So glad to be part of the podcast today. I'm starting with the conventional introduction that I'm a serial entrepreneur. At the moment, I've been an entrepreneur for 14 years. I have background as a startup entrepreneur and then as kind of professional services entrepreneur through my own development company. And I currently, I'm an entrepreneur in a way that I do consultancy and advisory services as well as board work. And then I also help to build startups in a co-founder model. And I also do kind of speaking and coaching and all kind of that stuff if it's relating to building the new, which is my thing. And one may guess, and always, there is some software involved when we come to the kind of, professional external context. But I guess, what is my specialty is that the projects and the companies and the people and the services that I'm involved in, they hold some type of difficulty in getting to the market, which means that they may be B2C services, which means that, they are not only software, they are, continuous product market fitting efforts in kind of explorative efforts that they are not only execution driven, they are also creativity driven. You need to figure out a lot of solutions to a lot of problems which are non-software related, people related, market related. And in that area, experience helps. So, like if you've done several or tens of them, there is ability to hold complexity and difficulty that only grows with the more you do. And then, you are able to kind of keep it calm and focus on the next ball, seeing that in order to get to the next round, this is what we need to do now. And those are the kinds of things that I do with my clients as well as a co-founder in the startups that I work. So maybe that's an intro. As a person, you can't do this type of a job if you're not interested in the new, and if you're not interested in the risk, and if you're not interested in something that has not been built before. So I'm an explorer at heart, and that means that when I go to vacation, I go to see the Atlantic Ocean and to hike the trails, and I don't sip beer by the pool. So, maybe that also is worth mentioning, that I think we can be entrepreneurs, sustainable entrepreneurs over long periods of time if we know ourselves and who we are and where we are fit.
Words of wisdom. I really like how you described the adventure and exploration part, Tiina. Definitely. Interesting thing came to my mind as I was listening to your story and your introduction, how you apply your experience from building all these things, how you are excited about new in different types of context, helping companies and businesses solve issues. As a new entrepreneur myself, I have encountered several situations where I come in as a kind of consultant, as an expert who is supposed to help the company with something. And then there is an existing framework. And then there is a thin line between learning new, so how the company wanted to do this and maybe envision the whole thing, and how they want me to actually come in and learn their domain, their field, and to kind of help them take it to the next level. And then at the same time, I have this temptation like, hey, let's break everything and build it my way. Because I know I have these years of experience from the past, I know how it's done. So I feel like neither is correct to kind of follow 100%. You have to find this kind of balance between utilizing your experience from the past and expertise, and at the same time learning new and adapting it to the context of this organization. How do you find that tricky balance?
Well, obviously, it is a tricky balance, and when you start a new project or a case with new people, you need to evaluate whether there is kind of, well, I call it sort of a balance with linear and non-linear. So do these people have openness in, let's say, being scientists, which believe in facts, and being creators, which is being imaginative and finding out extraordinary solutions to, surprising problems. And how do you live with these kind of, two simultaneous truths that are there when we build the new? And if there is no such soil in this team, in this client, in this project, very rarely you can succeed. So then walk away. I think, like with age, and with some experience, you become better at recognizing when, you should not push and you can't push. But if there is, an opportunity for a common dance, it emerges. And if there is not, then stop spending your time with those kinds of people.
I agree. Well, thank you for that input. Thank you for the words of advice. I definitely believe that it should be both parties kind of walking towards each other and meeting in the middle. So that makes sense.
Yes, so it's sort of, and I think, that's a skill that applies to any work, to any career, that, the best stuff happens when you're able to hold two opposite truths at the same time. And that's why, for example, very rigid frameworks of thinking, whether they come from the startup world or from the business world, are not to my liking, because they have been developed in contexts that very rarely apply to the situation of the company or the team that you meet. And therefore, they just don't work. So in that sense, it's a new day, it's a new opportunity, it's a new situation. Let's see what we can come up with together, and that discussion will tell whether there is a tomorrow or not for us together.
Absolutely. It's a bit like, having a toolbox of different tools, and then let's say I have a hammer and I have a screwdriver. I pull it out and we see, okay, is it the tool we want to use maybe, and we can use it to build a box, and then we use this box to stand on because we want to put on a shelf on the wall or something. I don't know.
Yes.
But
Yeah, exactly. And in the kind of, in the context of, business and new services and capitalism and everything involved, I kind of, people tend to be geared and sort of skewed towards those kinds of, frames of thinking and mindsets and whatever. And I call that kind of, they have fierce survivor mentalities and sometimes even big egos. And when it comes to the type of stuff that I do, you don't succeed with those mindsets. So you need some other aspects that, are balancing kind of that toolkit. And in kind of my work, that's kind of definitely a no-no. That, if people are in a very 𝐒⁴ Vaynerchuk mode, like run, Forrest, run.
Clear. Thank you for the advice, Tiina. Interesting question comes to mind also in the kind of context of entrepreneurship, something I've learned also last year. Going outside the comfort zone is something that people talk about a lot. But what I learned more about sales. And I felt like, being an entrepreneur was, in the beginning at least, not as much as about perfecting my craft, because I think I've been perfecting my craft over many years, working in different companies. And then I realized that I spent 90% of my time actually doing sales. And then when I actually close a sale, then I'm like, oh, do I even remember how to actually do my craft anymore? Because I've been perfecting my sales skills. I've been doing cold calls. I've been learning about cold email outreach. I think I can sell very well, and that excites me very, very much today. And then I was like, well, can I actually go back to doing this niche work that I used to do? So it becomes more of a maybe sales type of role being an entrepreneur. But when you're running a consultancy, of course, you're selling yourself. And that also kind of bridges a little bit over to job seeking, because I feel that in the current economy, many people are also seeking jobs for one reason or another. And then they kind of have to sell themselves. So that's a sales process. If they do it correctly, they can sell themselves to a company, and the company buys them and pays them salary. And then as entrepreneurs, we go out there and we sell. Either we are speaking with VCs and try to raise money to sell part of our company, or we are trying to sell to our potential clients, pilot customers, B2B, B2C. We're selling our product, or if we're offering service, we are selling ourselves. I'm an expert. I will help you. I will kind of bridge those gaps and meet in the middle of what we have just spoken about. So interesting thing about being a salesperson, of course, it's hard to learn the skill. There are many different tools. There are many different things you can do. And then it's all about rejections. You are getting rejections constantly. Like, it's a rejections game. Maybe it's a numbers game. Maybe some people are better at this than others. Maybe it's just about will to persevere and go and take all these rejections and then get to the yes. And eventually it happens. And sales cycles also can be different. They can be longer. They can be shorter. So what I'm trying to say here, entrepreneurship to me is about persevering through those rejections. And that is similar to job seeking, for example, or some other kind of types of context. But how do you feel about entrepreneurship and perseverance and rejections in general? And maybe sales. It's a big kind of ball.
Maybe I'll start from the sales and then continue to resilience.
Let's do
because
that.
I frame it a little bit differently, and I see where you're coming from with that comment. But kind of the way I have framed the sales is that I do business development. So, I develop networks and contacts and interesting things. So I follow interesting leads and what interests me. And that's kind of how I framed the way that, whether I'm selling myself as an advisor or board professional, or whether I'm selling my services, or whether I'm, raising a funding round for a startup that I'm involved in. I kind of frame that not in terms of sales, but I do business development. And that gives me a frame of mind that I look for common interests and common kind of benefits and, common ground. So I'm not selling. I'm looking for stuff where interests meet, needs meet, where there is, common benefits. And to me, that's a very, very different mindset with which I go to kind of meet the world and meet the people, that I don't need to close. I do look for common ground, and then if something follows, then it follows, and if it doesn't, then it doesn't. And maybe that also helps me in terms of when you look for common ground, that's sort of an intention and not closing what you look for. And then if you find common intentions, then you can put out proposals, maybe, and stuff like that. But that's first of all kind of, how I think about, let's say, all of my work, whether it's kind of, and selling in my context, I'm not selling software as a deal flow, and I fully understand that many sales ideas come from that world. But I come with kind of this more that, hey, I look for common sparks. And if there are not, then I look elsewhere.
Makes sense.
So maybe that's a starting point in kind of how do the mindsets and frameworks that you have, maybe they enable you or hinder you. And in this way, for example, so you don't get rejected So maybe it's a psychological defense. I don't know, but maybe like at least I've told myself that if you approach this way, you actually find more interesting people, more interesting interests that collide, and over longer term. And that's maybe because my nature of work is software and digital services, which is a very kind of those become successful over 7-year periods and stuff like that. They become successful because employees, investors, people who buy those things are committed to the same goals, to the same purposes, to the same drivers. And that's why the common grounds are more important. And rejections, so to say, then it means that maybe I've looked for wrong people. I've looked for I need to turn my kind of eyes towards a new direction where there can be more common ground and more common intentions. So that's maybe a very a different kind of platform to look at the sales and the rejections. And then obviously not all people are interested in working with you. That's obviously a fact of life, and and you need to be able to kind of hold and take that okay, I'm not the person. They rather these people buy from someone else. They don't buy my thinking. They don't kind of want to fund my startup because I'm a certain kind of person who drives this in certain kind of ways. That's a fact of life. And maybe for those situations and coming then to the resilience, there are obviously strategies that as an entrepreneur you need to also develop and have in your own toolkit, that you can't always frame every situation as business development and common grounds and stuff like that. Sometimes there are still rejections, and then you need to be kind of effective in processing those within yourself.
I really like the answer. Thank you, Tiina. It actually makes me more at peace with myself, and it does resonate with me that ultimately you're seeking common grounds, how to deliver value to each other, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's the sustainability of a career, of a business career. That now that we have all the mental health issues and burnouts and everything, and at least in my work, I'm long term in my work. I'm long term with my clients, with my investors. I'm committed to these things. Then that's what I build. And if that's not for someone, then too bad, for so sad.
That's the spirit, for sure.
Yes. So I'm long term in my own intentions, and I look for those, and that's kind of how I see success.
Brilliant. What comes to mind when I'm listening to you, I'm also thinking about this long-term game when we as individuals are engaged in something. And we both have worked in startups, and startups are very high-paced environments. And I know people talk a lot about burnout, and I have recently learned the term burn on, when you're constantly burnt out and you just function just fine. I don't know. Honestly, I enjoy constant stress. That's how I feel I'm efficient. When I'm not stressed, I feel like I'm just, becoming some sort of sludge, and I just cannot function. So I like a little bit of pressure and stress that helps me deliver. And then what happens over the years overall, the boundary between personal and work has blurred for me, even when I worked as an employee in a company. But now it is completely blurred. So it's just my life. And I really enjoy what I do. It is important to me to be good at what I do. And it's painful to not be able to provide value that I promised. So I really always strive to provide the best value I promised to my customers and partners. I don't know if we should talk about work-life balance in this context because I don't think it is the term that applies here. People kind of told me that, work-life balance is about balancing activities that give you energy, and then you focus on activities that give you energy. And if working gives you energy, then everything is fine. It's more about how do you manage your life and the life of people around you when you are constantly in this kind of state that maybe you're working, maybe you're not, maybe you're watching a show, maybe you're also answering an email to a potential client at the same time. And then to maybe you as an entrepreneur, that's a normal thing. It's a reality of life. And for people around you, they're like, Andrew, stop working. What are you doing? It's Easter or this kind of things. How do you kind of think about this boundaries, or maybe the whole framework being kind of more of a lifestyle, or I don't know, is it not? Do you build boundaries between kind of professional and kind of rest, exploration time, so to say? You go and explore the trails by the Atlantic Ocean. That's cool. Of course, there I assume you just disconnect fully. That's important. But just wanted to ask how you feel about that, because it's an interesting topic that kind of is often on my mind.
I'm wondering how would I... Okay, I'll go after it this route. I think it's really important in life and in entrepreneurship to follow what you're interested in. And not interested in a US way, but really interested in what sparks you, what is your curiosity. And I'm not saying the passion word. I don't think that's the right word. But there is something out there that really interests you. In this context, I think that I'm exchanging sort of my time and energy with my interests. And that's what I do as a person, and that's what I do as an entrepreneur. And if it becomes too much of, a productivity performance, it stops being a life for me. And my kind of, I think, best value, my kind of most unique contributions, my ability to drive team to pivot, they don't come from the number of hours. They come from the clarity and the ability to see the essential in every situation. And that ability is hindered if I work too much. So boundaries are extremely important for me, as well as kind of being curious and, being learning and being meeting new things on my own, out of my professional world. So my best ideas come by mixing what I meet personally and, then what I meet professionally. Again, I like to be on the frontier, as I said earlier. So I think that kind of in this line of work, what I do, the value comes from the ability to kind of switch thinking, switch direction, to see kind of what is more important than something else. If you are really tired, you are not able to do it. Therefore, I, for example, never work on weekends. I never work on weekends nowadays, period. I can work nights. I wake up 5:30 sometimes. I work on weekdays. I do explorative trips. I do painting. I practice creativity every week. I do a bunch of stuff out of the weekdays that, is directly contributing to the quality of my decision making and my ability to kind of assess what is essential. But I have boundaries, and I find extremely, extremely important that, people are able to set their own boundaries, and that's kind of how I've set them for myself.
Great answer. Thank you, Tiina. I admire when people can be structured and strict with themselves, because I think, being accountable to yourself is the hardest thing to do, at least to me. Because if I promised to somebody that, okay, on Thursday at 10 in the morning, we're going to be recording a podcast, I will show up and I'll do my best to be on time and make everything
exactly
work. But if it's
and
like...
I'm the same.
Yeah.
And I am the same. And but then, like you need to be kind of clear in what you promise, that they are within those boundaries.
Yeah. But then if I just tell to myself, like, well, on Thursday at 10 in the morning, I booked this time slot in my calendar where I maybe think about the structure of the podcast and, well, I think I have other urgent things to do instead.
No. But I say that, so my most efficient behavioral hack is to promise something to someone.
Yeah.
So it means that, I will always show up swimming. I will always show up, like delivering this article that I've promised. I'm always delivering as well. And that's why I kind of use that also carefully, what I promise to deliver and at what time.
Absolutely. Yes. I think maybe it's also a Finnish thing, in Finland, words matter more than in many other places, I think. When I came to Finland many years ago, I realized that if somebody says, we're going to go to sauna in on October 10th at 5 p.m., and then we are going, even though today is April, we are going then. So it's like, when people say it, then it's official, and then you just better mark it in your diary. So
yes.
I think it's a good productivity hack in that sense, for sure. Just to make it official, promise to somebody, and then stick with your promise. Then you also build trust, you build your creed. And I think that's how you also maybe do your business development. That's how you build your personal brand, when you stick to your promises, I guess.
Yes. And I guess, coming back to, in order to kind of have those boundaries, you need to know what you're interested in, what are your important things, and, what you really want to be involved in. So boundaries and the interests, they kind of are the different sides of the same coin. If you really know that, this is for me, I'm interested in this, then, you will do the things. But if it's sort of on the gray area, and you promise too much of those things that are on the gray area, then that's unproductivity. So to me, productivity is really being clear on, this is what I've promised because there is a core that really interests me in this particular company, particular project. That's why I'm doing it. That's why I'm showing up. That's why it's on my agenda and on my to-do list. And for me, this kind of part is maybe something that we're not talking enough of. Is this a life for me? Am I interested in this? Why there are so many things that we use time that we're not truly interested in?
Yeah.
Let's not do it.
Great idea. Yes, let's not do it. I agree. 100%. Tiina, we have rather limited time for the session. I am trying to stick with shorter recordings in this podcast. Is there something that we haven't touched but you really want to share with our viewers, listeners today?
Maybe I want to continue where we ended up, that last one, that we can also decide not to do certain things that really are not important for us, and kind of coming back to identifying what things in our work life, in our professional life, are of interest to us, and we can and we should. And maybe that's my kind of big thing to give to the audience today, is that I'll give you, you are allowed to look for things that interest you. You are allowed as a person, as a human being, as a professional, to look for things. So it means that not immediately short term, we all have situations that, we need to survive in those situations. But medium term, long term, in your life, in your professional life, you are allowed to look for things that are important, meaningful, that are interesting, and to work with those.
Excellent message. I really, really, really like it. It resonates with me. Thank you for sharing, Tiina.
Thank you.
With these words of wisdom, I think we can conclude today's session. Thank you so much for joining. And
thank you.
Yes, I'm wishing you all the best on your entrepreneurial, personal and professional journey, and keep on exploring.
Yes, you too, Andrew, and thank you so much, and happy to talk to you today.
Thank you, Tiina.